The NBA offseason has dragged on like a slow burn movie with no climax, testing the patience of fans who are hungry for drama. But just when it seemed like nothing big was left to discuss, a rumor erupted that sent shockwaves through the basketball universe. LeBron James, the king, the player who has defined 2 decades of NBA history, could actually end up joining forces with Stephen Curry and the Golden State Warriors. A pairing so surreal that it sounds more like a fever dream than a legitimate scenario. And yet, here we are, dissecting it, because according to trusted insider Jake Fisher, the Warriors have been quietly monitoring LeBron's situation for the past year and a half, long before the Lakers even traded for Luka Doncic. Which means this isn't just some fan-made 2K fantasy trade, but an actual topic of discussion inside NBA boardrooms, a reality that executives, agents, and players whisper about behind the scenes. And while the very idea of LeBron and Steph wearing the same jersey feels like something that belongs in a multiverse comic book, it's not entirely absurd given the crossroads we've reached, because LeBron himself has been visibly frustrated in Los Angeles, making statements through his agent that suggested the Lakers are no longer prioritizing him, but instead focusing on Luka as the new centerpiece. A subtle but cutting message that instantly changed the narrative from LeBron is the heart of the Lakers to LeBron's Lakers chapter is winding down. And once that seed was planted, the speculation machine exploded. Fans joked about him pulling the ultimate troll move by joining the Clippers. Some dreamed of a Dallas reunion with Luka and Kyrie. Others whispered about a dramatic Miami return to finish unfinished business with Spoelstra and Pat Riley. But in reality, none of that happened because LeBron made the pragmatic choice to opt into his massive $50+ million contract, effectively tying himself to the Lakers for another season, at least on paper. But even that decision wasn't as straightforward as it looked, because insiders have pointed out that it wasn't about loyalty. It wasn't about the Lakers being desperate to keep him. It was about the simple fact that no other team wanted to pay that kind of money for a 40-year-old star, which is why fans in the comments roasted the narrative correction. It's not that nobody could pay that much. It's that nobody wants to pay that much. A brutal truth that LeBron himself surely knows. And this detail matters because it sets the stage for why a trade unthinkable just a few years ago is now genuinely on the table. Since for the first time in his legendary career, the question isn't, does LeBron want out? But do the Lakers actually want to move on from him? And that's a seismic shift, because back in 2018, they begged for his signature. They handed him the keys to the franchise. They let him orchestrate roster moves, and he rewarded them with a bubble championship. But now, with Luka entering his prime and LeBron clearly closer to the end than the beginning, the balance of power has flipped. And fans feel it too, with many openly saying things like, everyone in the NBA is over the LeBron experience. A savage but honest assessment that reflects how the vibe has changed around him. And if that's really the case, then suddenly a LeBron trade doesn't feel like fan fiction anymore. It feels plausible. And the Warriors make more sense than any other team because their window to win is just as urgent. Steph Curry is 37. Jimmy Butler just arrived in a blockbuster, and both need immediate help if they're going to squeeze one more title out of their careers. Plus, LeBron himself has teased the idea of playing with Steph ever since Team USA camp, smiling like a fanboy when asked about the possibility. So when you combine all of those threads, you get a rumor that feels less like smoke and more like fire. But then we hit the giant roadblock in the middle of the road. Draymond Green, the heartbeat of the Warriors dynasty, the emotional leader, the defensive anchor, the man who's been tied to Steph's success for over a decade, because while fans toss his name around casually as the obvious salary matcher in any LeBron trade, the reality is that moving Draymond would be a cultural earthquake in Golden State, a move that cuts deeper than X's and O's. And yet, as cold as it sounds, the math is ruthless. LeBron's contract is enormous, and with Wiggins already shipped out in the Butler trade, the Warriors don't have many other big contracts left to balance the money. Which means Draymond's $25+ million salary is basically unavoidable. So any trade that brings LeBron to the Bay has to include him, plus Moses Moody, plus Buddy Hield or another filler just to make the numbers align. And when you spell it out like that, you realize why this hasn't already happened. Because the fan base itself is torn in half. Some are screaming, "You can't trade Draymond. He is the Warriors' identity." While others are cracking jokes like, "This trade would humble LeBron and Draymond at the same time, a wet dream scenario," highlighting how polarizing this deal would be. And then you've got the more analytical voices pointing out that LeBron could have just walked into free agency if he declined the option, but he didn't. Not because the Lakers begged him to stay, but because the market wasn't there. Which makes you wonder if the Warriors really want to mortgage their culture for a one-year rental, especially when the whispers are louder than ever that this might be LeBron's final NBA season. A retirement tour wrapped in the disguise of another title chase. And if that's true, then you're asking Golden State to give up core pieces for a man who might walk away in 9 months. A massive gamble, even if he still plays at an all-NBA level. Because as fans love to point out, he's the only all-NBA guy with a negative plus-minus. A subtle dig at his declining dominance. But on the flip side, this is LeBron James we're talking about. The same guy who has defied age, science, and expectations for 21 years. The same guy who dragged broken rosters to finals. The same guy who still commands double teams even on off nights. So the thought of him lining up alongside Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler in a 2-year window isn't just exciting. It's terrifying for the rest of the league. The type of scenario that sells out arenas, breaks TV ratings, and floods social media with memes. Which is exactly why the Warriors can't dismiss it out of hand. Especially if LeBron privately assures them he's got more than 1 year left in the tank. Because the upside, another banner in Chase Center, Steph's 5th ring, LeBron's 5th franchise switch turning into a title, is the stuff of legend. But here's the catch. What's in it for the Lakers? From their perspective, they could just let LeBron expire in a year instead of taking on Draymond, who has never played outside Steve Kerr's system and whose fiery personality might not mesh well with Luka's quieter demeanor, making him a questionable fit in LA. And that's the type of dilemma front offices hate. Do you take value now or gamble on a clean break later? That's why some fans are suggesting a 3-team trade. Maybe rerouting Draymond somewhere else in exchange for younger assets the Lakers actually want. But as we've seen time and again, 3-team trades rarely survive negotiation because the moving parts are just too complicated, especially this late in the offseason when most rosters are locked in. Which makes this whole discussion feel like balancing on a tightrope where one wrong step collapses the whole plan. And yet, as impossible as it feels, LeBron has made impossible things happen before. He forced Cleveland to rebuild on the fly. He convinced Miami to form a super team in 2010. He flipped the Lakers roster multiple times through sheer influence. So if he really wants this, if he's truly offended by the Lakers prioritizing Luka over him, if his ego is burning at the thought of not being catered to at 40 the way he once was, then he has the leverage to make the impossible happen, whether at the start of the season or more likely at the trade deadline when desperation peaks. And if that domino falls, the Warriors are the obvious first call, because the fit is too perfect. Steph's shooting gravity, Butler's toughness, LeBron's playmaking. It's the kind of big three that looks like a cheat code. And while skeptics dismiss it as clickbait, the fact that these conversations existed as far back as 18 months ago proves that the idea is real, not fantasy. And when you layer in LeBron's long-term motives, his hints about waiting for Bronny and even Bryce to share an NBA court, the timeline gets even murkier. Because the Lakers know they might be holding on to a player who's already half out the door mentally, which means their decision isn't just about basketball. It's about symbolism, legacy, and ego management. And with pressure mounting from every direction, the Lakers wanting to validate Luka's era, LeBron desperate for one last ring, the Warriors scrambling to maximize Steph's final years, you can practically feel reality bending. And in the NBA, when pressure builds to this level, something always breaks, often in ways nobody saw coming. Which is why, no matter how far-fetched it looks on paper, you can't rule this out entirely, because all it takes is the perfect storm. Draymond being shopped, LeBron committing beyond a year, the Lakers agreeing to take short-term pain for long-term clarity, and the Warriors deciding that one last dance with Steph is worth sacrificing depth. And if that storm ever aligns, then we're not just talking about a blockbuster trade. We're talking about one of the biggest, most shocking moves in NBA history, on par with KD joining Golden State in 2016, or even surpassing it. Because this wouldn't just be about basketball, it would be about narrative. LeBron James, the man who has always chosen his own path, finally being traded against the natural rhythm of his own choosing. A symbolic passing of the torch from one era to another, and that alone would shake the league to its core, rewriting the way we talk about player empowerment, legacy, and loyalty. So while my safe prediction still leans toward LeBron staying in Los Angeles for this year and then either retiring or hitting free agency in 2026, I'm far less confident in that outcome now than I was even a few months ago. Because the cracks are widening, the whispers are multiplying, and if the NBA has taught us anything over the last 2 decades, it's this. When it comes to LeBron James, never, ever say never. Word count